Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn at pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Yeah. Hello. I have to throw myself on the mercy of you all. I found as I was pawing through newspapers and what do you call that? Through Twitter, that scrolling. Thank you. That I just don't have the stomach to talk about any of it at the moment. I mean, I feel like I went to see that Jordan Peele's new movie, Us, and that's it's a horror movie of sorts, and well, it is a horror movie. And I don't usually, that's not my genre. I might be the only person alive who's never seen any, I've never seen a movie that Freddy Krueger is in or whatever. I've never seen a Halloween movie. I just don't do it. I inadvertently saw The Shining once. And I do not have the capacity to enjoy feeling terror. And I don't. It must be something that most people do, but I don't. Anyway, I feel like now that the news is sort of like a horror show too now, and I just, there are days when I can't. I'm reminded of that Barbara Bush quote. I just don't want to trouble my beautiful mind. I believe she was talking about like these, it was after Hurricane Katrina, and it was something she should have bothered her beautiful mind about. But I feel that way. And speaking of Barbara Bush, so she's got, posthumously, there's a book out, and turns out she flat out says she would not be a Republican today. She does not identify in any way with that party. And you know what? The people who now represent that party would say, well, hell with you. Who wants you? You're everything we're reacting against. Oh, God. So I having done this, namely babbled in front of a microphone for over 30 years, I recall many times saying before the show to my producer, I don't have a thing. And I would say that when I had 3 hours on radio. I would come in empty-handed. I don't have a thing. And often those shows became the better shows, which I'm not expecting today. But it was odd. Being totally unprepared resulted in who knows what. I mean, you just didn't know something. Silence was not an option. So everything I've said up till now is me filling air. That's all I'm doing here. Shall I tell you how I planted pansies yesterday and it made me feel better because they're such beautiful flowers and can... Okay, I've said this before in the past, but explain to me why the word pansy is used, well, it used to be used for gay men, right? Oh, he's a pansy. But it's used to refer to any weak, right? Is it sort of like a weak, does it have to be a man? My sense of it is like a weak, effeminate man, maybe, right? Pansy. And the funny thing about that is, of course, that pansies are like the toughest damn flower I know. You can plant them now because if it freezes, they don't care. They bounce right back. If it blizzard comes and snows on them and buries them for weeks, when the snow melts, there the pansy is again, intrepid, tough as nails, and beautiful. So how does a pansy, I don't know. That's always annoyed me. It's the same thing that, women are supposed to be the weaker vessel. Well, I don't think so. Can we have any male volunteers to give birth? Just one. Just one once. And see how strong a vessel you guys are. There's all of this fake news, right? That is just part and parcel of the culture we live in, of the mythologies that surround us, of the very words we are given as tools to communicate with each other. There are all of these biases built in, which is why I sort of despair about ever moving beyond some of the more enduring ones, such as misogyny, sexism, and racism, and xenophobia. I think it's just built in to the human, and our bodies can't evolve fast enough to keep up with some of our brains that are out in front of our bodies. I don't know what I'm saying. Yes, I do. I'm really, on a personal level, I am really struggling with my growing, I think I said this the other day, and with my growing revulsion, I don't think that's too strong a word, of so many of my fellow humans. I know there's good in people, but it seems often that what is manifest is instead the darker side. Oh well, so that's where I am, and why, as I leafed through the papers, I groaned, and I groaned again, and then I groaned again, and I would see something that looked like it might be something new, and I would eagerly pounce on it, only to find that it too ended in some, man-made horror or problem or misery or something to that effect. So, hard. I know there are people out there that live their lives who do not bother their pretty little heads with any of this. Of course, they are then not being good citizens, but they are engaging in very good self-care. They are being extremely selfish to say, I'm only going to focus on my own. But they're not being selfish, right? Listen to while I talk to myself, because what can we all do? We all live on a micro level. We don't live on a macro level. So inasmuch as one would choose to just say, I can't fix all of this crap, but what I can do is be a truly good person, as much as I am capable. And as much as I am capable of reaching out and helping those in need in my own little microsphere, that's all I can do. And in fact, if people did that, we'd have a pretty good world. It's just that there's so many humans that wouldn't even consider it. What? Help somebody? Actually, speaking of that, Roger had sent me, he said that at his workplace that a lot of, I guess, people have on their cubicle walls or whatever, motivational quotes. And he says, given where he works, they're usually like from Vince Lombardi or Ronald Reagan. And let me tell you about Vince Lombardi. He was a liberal Democrat. Hello? Yes, he was. I do know that. And he was, he hated bigots. He hated bigots. And he was very instrumental in getting the first open housing law through the city council of Green Bay, Wisconsin. Now, granted, it was because he wanted his players to be able to live in Green Bay with no problems if they happen to be black. But he suffered bigotry by virtue of being a dark-skinned Italian Catholic who had, a name that ended in a vowel. It got in his way when he was growing up, and it enraged him. So Roger said that, so he works with these people who have Ronald Reagan things. And not that they didn't say, they both did say things that I can see would be motivational, in fact. So Roger shared what he has on his wall. And it's the word think, T-H-I-N-K. After the T, every letter stands for a question that you should ask yourself. T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspirational? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? Oh boy, that must go over well amidst the Lombardi and Reagan quotes. And then Roger sent me this because he made the mistake, apparently, of ingesting some of Trump's rally in Michigan yesterday. And he said, for a Trump supporter, or for Trump, that T-H-I-N-K would stand for T, F the truth. H, does it help me? I, does it inspire others to hate my enemies? N, is it necessary for my benefit? And K, kindness is for, I'm not going to use that word, I don't like it, pansies. I'll replace it with another P word. And then Roger says, and here's where, remember when presidents didn't sound like gangsters? Yeah, I do. And it seems to me that I did also see a quote, a tweet, a something from him that I thought was particularly repulsive, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I just moved on. Oh no, here it is. Apparently this is from that Michigan rally. Imagine how small-minded and how insecure a person would have to be to need all these screaming people in front of them, screaming your name. And imagine how, I'm sorry, I've run out of adjectives and then I just use the same ones over and over again. Imagine a president, someone who has ascended to a position of extraordinary responsibility and leadership. Imagine him going before a crowd and saying, and here I will quote, he's talking about the people who supposedly are the elite, the people who would never, he always, all biographies of him say the same thing, he always wanted, coming from Queens, to be accepted by the elite who were Manhattan, and they never wanted to be anywhere near him. They found him to be exactly what, in fact, he is, a lowlife in every way. And so there he is last night in, where was he? Cedar Rapids or something? No, that's Michigan. Michigan. Something Rapids? Yeah, Grand Rapids. I got it. I know it was some Rapids. Grand Rapids. So here's the President of the United States. I have a better education than them. I'm smarter than them. I went to the best schools. They didn't. Much more beautiful house, he says. Much more beautiful apartment. Much more beautiful everything. And I'm president, and they're not. I'm sorry. I mean, that's third grade playground taunting. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And of course, it's untrue as well. Can you imagine being so pathetic that you have to say things like that? And can you imagine how lucky you are that you have gotten yourself somehow, because other people are fools, into a position where you can say these things and be cheered, not ridiculed, cheered by your fans. So sometimes all of this is just too much for any of us. I want to note, I didn't know that today is apparently Vietnam War Veterans Day. I didn't even know there was such a thing. Veterans Day is not good enough. We have to peel off the Vietnam vets and give them another day. When did that happen? I mean, it's fine with me. My heart goes out to anyone who served in that mistaken horror. My heart goes out to them. All those young men and some women who never came home, who died in that mistake. Ugh. So, as they say, thank you for your service. You should not have been asked. Oh, I have a friend here who's just sending me something about Buttigieg. There, I said it, I think. Buttigieg. And I have wanted to talk about him. He's like the bright spot. Oh, this figures. And she says, for the last 2 days, I've limited my news intake to all things Pete Buttigieg. I have not felt this good since. Well, I can't remember when. It's true. He's a real upper. And I do also, that's the one positive thing I do want to talk about. I was heartened to see that he has moved up in the polls. He's passing people with bigger name recognition. There was a poll taken in Iowa yeah, I think came out yesterday, that has him in third place behind, of course, the names that are known, Biden and Sanders. And there's another poll that has him, a more national poll, that shows him in fifth place, tied with Kamala Harris. And also behind, of course, Biden, I believe in that poll too, Sanders, and probably O'Rourke. I find it interesting that somebody unknown and with an odd name like that can still break through. And I'm also wondering if part of it isn't that we're all sort of sick of, had it up to here with the ones we do know. I mean, they're all part of the scene that has gotten so ugly. He's not. He is removed from Washington, D.C., and right there, it makes him more palatable. It also potentially makes him more electable, if you think about it. I heard someone say the other day that, we might be getting to a point where the only people who will be able to win national elections will be relative unknowns, by virtue of the fact that they come essentially without the kind of record that can be picked apart and used against them, right? So this is unfortunate, actually, because, of course, somebody who's been around, has gotten a lot of experience, one would think would be better suited to become the president of the United States. But I don't think our system allows for experience in that way anymore, because a person's experience will be used against them. There are so many reasons why this guy, Buttigieg, should not be where he is already, out there rising in the polls. He is extraordinarily young to run for president. He's 37. He is gay. He is married. He's the mayor of a little city. Now that's, that doesn't sound like presidential material. And yet, every time we see him or hear him, we want him. He looks like, yes. He doesn't sound like the others, like any of the others. There's a calmness about him and a sort of, you can tell a sort of just let's get this done kind of here, you know what I saw? There was a tweet by Pittsburgh's own Howard Feynman about him. Feynman is besotted. And he said this today. The hashtag Mayor Pete is trending for people who don't want to try to say or write Buttigieg. Howard Feynman writes, Mayor Pete's rise so far has been remarkable, but not that surprising if you've spent time with him, as I did last fall in D.C. So Feynman has one-on-one'd him before all of this started happening, and here's what Feynman says. He seems to have thought everything through, is eloquently no-nonsense, determined, but not inherently angry. his youth, IQ, and idealism are a tonic. That's Howard Feynman loving Buttigieg. And I must say that everything I have read about him as well, I'm inclined to agree. Where did I see? I got nothing here, so why am I thinking I've got something here? Okay, I do have a little bit. So he gets elected mayor of South Bend, Indiana, where Notre Dame is. And that city has been a Midwestern Rust Belt city. Its biggest employer was auto manufacturing. In fact, this is how far back it goes. I don't know how old you all are, but it's really been in decline since the 1960s when Studebaker shut its plant down there. So, I mean, that's how long ago they were making cars in South Bend. I think he grew up there, his parents both being professors at Notre Dame. And he becomes mayor. I mean, first of all, he's a whiz kid, just an extraordinary whiz kid. Here's the bio. I know his father, who was a professor at Notre Dame, is an immigrant from Malta, which is where you get a name like Buttigieg, apparently. And so, I mean, Buttigieg also is a first-generation American. And I got to tell you, it is often first-generation Americans that are the ones that have the most fire, haven't been beaten down by being here too long, haven't become soft, haven't become cynical, because generationally you see that in this country. I don't know if you see it. I think I see it in my own family. So Buttigieg has two parents. I don't know about his mom, whether she was an immigrant, but they're professors. He goes to high school. He wins a national essay contest as a high school student. And his essay was about, get this, I do want to see this. His essay was about Bernie Sanders. He writes a high school essay on Bernie Sanders, and it wins a national contest. That, apparently, led to an internship with none other than Senator Ted Kennedy. Then he goes on with his education. He gets degrees from Harvard, Oxford, I believe, as a Rhodes Scholar. You ain't a Rhodes Scholar if you ain't one smart cookie, I'll tell you that right now. And after all of that, he went home, back to South Bend, and at the age of 29, runs for and is elected mayor of South Bend, Indiana, becoming the youngest mayor of a, I don't know what they would call him, of a mid-size American city. Now, we had one of those. Remember, we had a youngest mayor, Ravenstall. Remember him? How old was he? He was over 29. but he was called like the youngest mayor maybe of a major city. I don't know. Would have been better if we had Buttigieg. I think he's a little head and shoulders above Ravenstall. So Ravenstall was how old? He was, really? Okay, 26. Dear God in heaven. Gee whiz. Anyway, while he's mayor, he takes a 7-month leave of absence to go fight in Afghanistan because he is also in the Navy Reserves as a lieutenant in the Naval Reserves. So this is a guy who's packed a lot of stuff in. And what I find fascinating, of course, if he were to get to the point where he's moving even further up in the polls, the media, you know what they'd be doing. Oh, what are we going to have? A president with a first husband? And how's that going to work? And, oh, my God, you can just imagine. But you know what? I don't think Americans give a damn. Of course, we women are going to start howling. Oh, I see. So black men, gay men, probably three-legged men, two-headed men all get to be president before a woman, right? Yeah. A big fan of his is the guy who helped Obama win, and that's David Axelrod. He loves him. And Axelrod says that I do have a quote here, saying Buttigieg, for him to get the nomination, it would be a way, way uphill battle. Just to get sober here for a second. And Axelrod says this: one of the political realities is that Buttigieg is a new generation candidate. That's, I guess, new generation. He's a young guy. And Beto O'Rourke is now in the race. And Beto fills a lot of space. They're fishing in the same pond, says Axelrod. And Beto has a larger fishing pole. Yeah, but I'll tell you, I've already said I'm getting a little queasy about Beto. I don't really want to speak ill of any of these people because I'm supporting whoever wins enthusiastically. But Beto, as I said the other day, really seems to me to be, what was that phrase? All hat, no cattle. He's just, what's he done? I mean, he's been a member of Congress. And my understanding is he's done very little in Congress. He's just a guy who I think himself said, I was born to do this, meaning be president. So he's just checking things off on his way. I don't. And what's he done? He didn't win against Ted Cruz. So I have to tell you, Buttigieg is my guy. Increasingly, I talk to people who I haven't talked to about this, and they say the same thing. It's probably the kiss of death for us to be supporting him. And Mary writes, his husband is a gem. And if you're not following him on Twitter, you should be. Okay, well, I will. Apparently, yeah, I've heard that too, that people are just loving the husband. How It'd be something. Man, would that drive the evangelicals stark raving nuts again? So at this point, that's my guy. And I'm sorry, that I'm not saying Kamala or Elizabeth or Corey. But Buttigieg does tick off. He ain't a white heterosexual male. He's a white gay male, and that is also a marginalized in part group, certainly in our politics. Oh, thank you. Barbara tells me that, yes, his father is an immigrant from Malta. His mother has been a Hoosier, an Indiana resident for multiple generations. So she's an American. Somebody's sending me pictures of pansies. Thank you. They're the best. So that's where I am with, with what's happening at this point. I'll tell you, I think Bernie and Biden are not right. Biden, because of what I said earlier, speaking of Buttigieg, nobody's got more political baggage than Joe Biden. And in this time where we have moved so far, and I'm sure he has too, but there's all of that stuff. There's the fact of the Anita Hill hearings. There are other things that now seem so unpalatable, even though, that's just the way it was then. But I just feel like he's got so much baggage. And he's an old white man. They're both old white men. And I do think it is time for the old white men to embrace a kind of emeritus status, to be there, to mentor, but to get out of the way. There are others holding up the same values. And the only reason that these two old white men are ahead in the polls is something as simple as everybody knows who they are. It's as simple as name recognition. And maybe Buttigieg's weird name actually helps him with recognition. Even if people can't say it or pronounce it, they can actually just say that guy with the weird name, or Mayor Pete. Okay, so I just want to say that I'm loving him. Why not Tulsi Gabbard? Are you friggin' kidding me? I don't know much about her, but she strikes me as a serious lunatic. I mean, I don't even trust that woman. I wish I knew more about her. I have such a strong reaction to her. For one thing, Tulsi, she's a representative from Hawaii, for those of you who don't know. And, I didn't know this. She's a Hindu. And a veteran. But she particularly seems to have a thing for, Syrian President Assad. And, here it is. And Wikipedia even says her opposition to removing Syrian President Assad from power and she also, her voting and lobbying against LGBT rights prior to 2005 Okay, I just, everything I have bumped into in regard to Tulsi Gabbard, I have not. She doesn't in any way interest me. That's all I want to say. Now, granted, I could learn a little bit more, but hey, if any of you are planning a trip to Brunei, I would not go. I just saw this headline. By the way, do you know where Brunei is? I did not. I've heard of the Sultan of Brunei because for some reason, you know, he's a sultan and he's got tons of money. And I believe it's he or his family that bought the Beverly Hilton Hotel, Beverly Hills Hotel. And that became known because he said he was going to institute Sharia law that would have the death penalty by stoning for gay sex. And I think there was like a boycott of the hotel, if I'm remembering that right. Anyway, he calmed down a little bit and didn't, and now this story is that he has quietly instituted this beginning April 3rd. Statutes allowing stoning and amputation of hands and feet will go into effect. So Brunei, it turns out, is another oil-rich country. Why do these sultanates all sit atop? Because this is not in the Middle East. He's not there with all the other rich Muslims. He's in Borneo, I think. I don't have good. It's a sultanate on the island of Borneo, right? I mean, Borneo. That's way out, right? That's not Middle East, and he rules over all less than 500,000 people. Okay, he's sort of like the ruler of Pittsburgh, but he sits on extraordinary wealth. And guess what? He lives in a house. I guess they call it a palace with 1,788 rooms. His brother is a bit of a problem. He has a reputation for extravagance and mistresses and erotic statues. Well, maybe he'll be stoned. All right. Anyway, just saying. Stay away from Brunei. So if we have Pete as our president, he couldn't go with his husband to Brunei without fear of being arrested and stoned to death, because these laws do apply to foreigners as well who are in Brunei. Okay, not that I wasn't serious, but changing subjects, I do want to say that now that we know that the Mueller report is over 300 pages, and that's just the text, it's not the appendices, and which are always of very great interest in reports like these, contain tons of information. The idea that we're supposed to be comfortable with a 4-page summary written by a hastily begotten attorney general who was only elevated to the position because he wrote an unsolicited 19-page memo saying that he did not think a president could collude. And then, lo and behold, he says he didn't. There is no doubt that we need to see the whole damn report. And what the Republicans did to Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee yesterday, calling for him to resign his position. They didn't call on Devin Nunes when he was the head of the committee to resign, when Devin Nunes, it seems to me, should end up in jail at some point. Oh. And the president has said that he should resign from Congress and calls him pencil neck. I mean, it was in that thing last night, too. I mean, schoolboy, elementary school taunts. Remember when we had presidents, and I'll say the two Bushes don't apply, but I'll give it to a Barack Obama and a few others who were capable of eloquence, of certainly thoughtful speech, and would not denigrate the office they held, which Donald Trump does, of course, every day, multiple times a day. By the way, back to Buttigieg. He has said, I remember, that, he lives in the Midwest in a red state. And he knows Trump voters. And he said they voted for him knowing full well he was the loathsome jerk he is. And Buttigieg says what I used to say, they voted for him because they want to blow the thing up, tear the house down. They thought this is the guy who's just going to upend the whole thing. And obviously, I find that to me the most extraordinarily irresponsible and reckless vote a person could do. But Buttigieg seems to sort of understand it, and he says the way you get these people back is you talk to them about, the things that, here's what we can do for you, help you, economics, health insurance, stuff like that. The fact that he knows how to navigate in a red state in the Middle West also brings to mind what I think as well, that we would be best served by a nominee who is not from either coast. Again, in that regard, he fits the bill there. It's not a biggie, but it's something I think that also lends to his allure. Not a federal office holder, not a member of Congress, but in fact an executive of a city with a long enough tenure to see that he has, in fact, done very well. And the people of that city re-elect him over and over again. Somebody just sent me something from the... Yeah, well, what else is new? Okay, so here, somebody's writing that some of what he said is so cruel. I'll read it. I don't know. During a rambling and lie-filled rally Thursday night in Grand Rapids, Michigan, President Trump mocked asylum seekers. Mocked asylum seekers fleeing violence and persecution in their home countries, suggesting they are not actually afraid for their lives. I just told you about the story the other day of that little boy who won the chess championship, who was living in a homeless shelter, who he's 8 years old, was brought to this country by his parents from Nigeria, and they are asylum seekers. They are here awaiting their hearings, and they are running from Boko Haram. And here's the president speaking last night in front of his mob. You have people coming up. You know, they're all met by lawyers. And they come out. They're all met by the lawyers. And they say the following phrase: I am very afraid for my life. I am afraid for my life. And then I look at the guy. He looks like he just got out of the ring. He's the heavyweight champion of the world. He's afraid for his life. It's a big, fat con job, folks. Oh, well, what's left to be said? Nothing. I can't think of a damn thing. Yeah, I mean, that actually makes me sick to my stomach. It does. And I think that does it for my... Oh, this was something sort of wonderful that I saw. The Philadelphia Orchestra did a concert and called Healing Tones. And it was a new composition that was commissioned by the orchestra, and it opens with the sound of the ram's horn, what Jews call the shofar, which is a traditional Jewish musical instrument that is used in our worship services, especially on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. And the Philadelphia Orchestra, when it premiered the work, asked if they could have the shofar from the Tree of Life synagogue here. And not only that, but when the shofar sounded, the Tree of Life shofar, it was, and it's hard, guys, to get a good note out of there. I couldn't in a million years. At the premiere of this commissioned orchestral piece in Philadelphia, the shofar was played by Pittsburgher Audrey Glickman, who witnessed and survived the massacre at Tree of Life. That's really powerful stuff. It sends chills. So, okay, there's that. I don't know that I have anything else. As I told you, I didn't have anything coming in, and I still don't have anything. Nope. Oh, I can tell you, you got 2 more days, because this ends tomorrow. That restaurant thing where you can get a multi-course meal at 30 different Pittsburgh restaurants for between $29 and $39. And we're talking about, and each restaurant, of course, is doing this in different ways. But, I mean, there's some seriously well-known restaurants here, including the Lamont and the Carlton and the Twisted Frenchman and Majorca and Paris 66 and lots of others. And so this is the last time I'm telling you that if you just, on your device, go to Taste 30 PGH, Pittsburgh, Taste 30, numerical, 30, pgh.com. That'll give you everything you need to know and the list of all the restaurants and all that stuff. Okay? Now, we really have, I think, about 4 minutes left in the show. But guess what? I got nothing left to say. Simple as that. And since it ain't radio, I can call it quits. So I think I'm going to. I really am. Okay, so thanks so much if you've been there. And I hope you all have a enjoyable weekend. And I will be back on Monday. As Doug Hirth used to say, the good Lord willing and the creeks don't rise. And I think that caveat is well put. See ya.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.